It just keeps going. Miniature projects never end. Ever. So as many of you know, the Addams Family house is going to be on display at a museum very soon. And it turns out I need to do some emergency lighting. When I first started talking with the museum, they were very clear with me, like there was no misunderstanding. I told them that I had battery-powered lights in my dollhouse, and they said, there's no way we can change out the batteries in the battery lights every day. Like, I totally understand that would be a waste of time and a waste of batteries. Like, that would be really not good. So I need to do some emergency lighting so that when the house is on display, you can see the outside and the inside. So when it comes to doll houses, the common practice is to lay out all of your wiring for your interior lighting before you even start. Well, I started this project about 12 years ago now, and I really don't have the heart or the time to take out wallpaper, ceiling, columns in order to hide all of the wiring. So instead, I have a, we'll call it emergency lighting plan. I'll go ahead and show you everything that I got. At this moment, I haven't done this project, so I really don't know how it's going to go. I am kind of guessing that this will work. I've kind of like laid it out in my head, and I think all of this together will kind of work, maybe. It kind of has to, because I already told them that I was going to have the house all lit up and everything was going to be good. So here we go. That's why here we go. This is a lighting pack by Kintion or Kinshin. I'm not really sure what the proper way to say this is, but I already, as you can see, opened this one, and I went through all of the pieces. And for someone like myself who doesn't understand electricity, is scared of fires and all of that kind of stuff, this seemed very straightforward and easy to use. So I have 3 packages, which totals 27 feet of lights. So that should be enough to light up the Addams Family house. I also have several long sticks, which are going to be what I apply the lights to. I'm going to try and link everything that actually worked in the description box down below in case you have a project that you've already finished and you want to add some lighting to. Like I said, I don't know if it worked yet, so whatever did work will be down below. The sticks, however, won't be because these were just some I had in my scrap pile. So you just need to go to your local hobby store and see what kind of craft wood they have and what would work for your project. I also have this, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen someone who's actually organized with their cords. That would not be me, that would be my husband. But he buys all these little like plastic tubes that covers the cords and keeps everything organized. So these are small cord covers, and I'm hoping they will kind of act like a large drain pipe on the side of the house, because I have to run the lighting from the bottom, where the plug will be, up the side of the house to access all the floors. So I'm hoping I can trick the eye into thinking it's just kind of a wide drain pipe and there won't just be like exposed wires. And because I do really like the look of the house when it's just battery lights, and I may not always want to have the lights permanently attached to the house, I'm going to use magnets and pin nails, which I've been using in the Beetlejuice house. And this has worked really well so far, so I'm hoping it will work for this project too. Also, it will make easy access in case any of the connections come loose. All you have to do is remove a piece, take the magnets off, and then just kind of fix it. So that's the bulk of the plan. Go ahead and leave me a comment if it sounds like it's going to work or not. We're gonna find out together. Before we head over to the actual project, I'm gonna show you just how simple these lights are, so that if you're interested in trying this yourself, you can decide whether or not you think it's for you. So there is a plug that already comes with an attachment. There is a remote, which is really helpful because you don't have to take the plug in and out of the wall. You can just use the remote, and then it also has different brightnesses, so we'll kind of see how that looks once everything's on the house. This is a dimmer, so if you didn't want to use the remote, you can manually dim it, and it's really easy. You just plug it in here, and then this end gets plugged into the lights, which this is the roll of lights. The lights come on a roll like this, so it really is just strip lighting. It's one long connected piece. So they just plug in here. And now, if that's all you wanted, you're ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and plug this in so you can see how it works. So I have the plug in place. This is the dimmer, which you can also use as an on-off switch, and it just comes on. If you hold it, you can dim the lights. And then I guess it kind of flashes whenever it's all the way dim. I don't know, I'm guessing. All right, so this is how these lights work. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn them off. And let me show you the connections, which is what makes this such an easy product to use. We're not sponsored, by the way. This was a suggestion from the museum that they've used before, and I'm so glad they suggested these because really it does look like it's going to make this so much easier. So these are connector strips. There's one that's shaped just a long strip, and then there's one that kind of helps you turn a corner because the ends are facing up instead of out to the sides. So when you want to use it, even though this looks like one big long piece, they do connect every foot maybe, and you can just take it apart. And if there's a area where you don't want to have lights, you just plug in the extender, and then you can still turn your lights on, and it works. So it skips that area. So that's going to be really helpful for me to put lights on the house, and in the areas where I don't want lights, I can add this very thin piece, and it's not going to be too much in the way. So that's how these lights work. You can also, you know, if you don't want the whole strip, you can take off these pieces and you can just have a foot of lights. I'm also going to go ahead and open this up so we can see what these look like. I ordered them in gray, so hopefully I won't have to paint them too much because I think I would want them to be like a silver color. So hopefully I can just add some metallic paint over the outside and it'll look okay. And I don't have to do a ton of painting. Okay. So these come like so. As I said, they cover up wires. So there's a piece in there. Oh, here we go. And then this can be taken out. So I don't need really this piece. I can save that for something else because that's kind of an interesting shape. But this is the piece that I want. It's like a C type shape. And I'm thinking I can add some paper to the exterior, brush some silver paint on here. I'll probably sand it a little bit. And then this will make a nice downspout, which I can run my wires within. It also has some really cool covers to go around corners. So I'll have to play with that because there might be a couple corners I have to go around. I'm not quite sure. But if this idea works, I think this could be a really great way to run electricity outside of your house and it not be super noticeable. So now it's time to get to the project. Don't have a camera person, so I'm gonna have to pan over myself. Dun dun dun! I started this process by painting the sticks that I knew the lights were going to be put onto later. I've been doing this thing where I take these large rubber bands, hook clips to them, put them on my boom arms and just let them hang down. This helps with the warping. If I were just to paint one side of the stick at a time, it's most likely that the sticks will warp and will be harder to attach to my house. If I can paint both sides at the same time, it won't warp as much and I won't get wet paint on everything as it dries. After I had them all finished, I realized I needed to add one more piece. In order to do that, I'm going to make sure that I have enough room for my strip lights by laying them on top of the stick I just painted and marking with a pencil the width I need to apply the lights. I'm going to be adding a square dowel, and it's just going to be glued onto the brown piece I already painted underneath the line I marked, and so the flat part on the brown is where the lights are going to be applied. I'm using tacky glue to do this. I'm doing this because of the weird way I made my house. It has these areas around the bottom of the columns that stick out further than the base of the house, and so by applying the square dowel, it means I'm not going to be interfering with that trim that goes around my columns. This is obviously specific to my project, but is something that you could consider if you want to try and do this for yourself. Once I know I have enough of the wood pieces to span the entire length of my first floor, I'm going to mark out where I want my magnets to be. I'm keeping in mind where my columns are so that nothing interferes. Once I have it generally marked out, I'm going to take my magnet, lay it onto the face of the square dowel, and mark that with a pencil. This is when I realized doing this on top of a metal table is not the best idea because the magnet keeps trying to fly off of the wood and stick to the table. I'm doing about 3 magnets every 18 inches or so, whatever I think will work the best to keep my wood pieces in place. Because I had to add my square dowels, I wanted to inset the magnets into the dowels so that I just didn't have so much bulk. If I added magnets on top of the square dowels, it was really going to add a lot. So to inset it, I started trying to use my craft knife to cut into the wood, but it was just too difficult and I knew it was going to cause me a lot of hand pain to do it that way. So I grabbed my Dremel and a cut-off wheel and started grinding into the wood, and that worked really well. I just did several shallow cuts into the wood along the width of where the magnet was going to be, and then smoothed it out once I knew I had cut enough wood out of the area. Then I could test it with my magnet to know that it fit in and was flush with the surface of the wood. It would probably be best if my magnet was the same width as the dowel, but I wanted to use magnets that I already had and didn't have to buy anything new. To insert the magnets permanently, I'm using a little bit of wood glue and then pressing the magnet onto where I put the wood glue, and this is going to be inside of the groove that I cut. In order to hold it in place, I am going to be using a strip of paper. It's kind of like a little mini seat belt that keeps the magnet from being pulled out whenever it's pulling towards some kind of metal. To add the paper, I am putting wood glue across the face of the magnet and across the wood so that it holds on all of those surfaces, and this will help keep the magnet in place. The reason I'm using wood glue for this is because wood glue has a little bit more volume to it, and I felt like it would fill in the spaces between the magnet and the wood a little bit better than tacky glue would. After that, I added a little bit more glue on the very edge of the paper, and this is how it's looking before it's painted. I'm also going to be adding my pin nails to the dollhouse itself. Pin nails are long nails that go into a nail gun, and typically they are stuck together when you get them in their packaging. I'm cutting off 3 or 4, however many fit along the edge of my dollhouse, and then I am gluing them in place again with wood glue. If I wanted to inset these, I probably could with the Dremel, but I really didn't want to start drilling into my house until I knew this would work, and in the end it worked well enough that I didn't have to at all. Once I knew the pin nails were securely in place, I went over top of them with another layer of wood glue for further protection, kind of the same seatbelt idea I had before. And then I was able to go back and do this to all of the wood pieces that were going to go across my house. That ended up being about 10 wood pieces in total. And that means I probably used about 30 magnets, 3 per wood piece. That's an estimate. I numbered each wood piece so I could remember what order I was putting them on in, and that was going to help me down the line when I had multiple, and that way I just didn't get confused on what I was doing. After everything had dried, the magnets and the pin nails, I could test my very first time to see if this was even going to work. And thankfully, at least the magnet part of this idea was working really well, and by painting it brown, it blended in beautifully to my dollhouse. While the magnetized wood pieces were drying, it was then time to go back and do all the pin nails across my entire house. I did the magnets first, so I knew where the pin nails needed to be, and then I went across the house and just kind of marked where each pin nail was supposed to be located. So now I'm just cutting them off and moving slowly across the house, looking for my mark indicators on where they need to be glued on. Of course, this is a long drying process to make sure that the wood glue is completely dry, so I wanted to do as many as possible so that everything could kind of dry at the same time and hopefully get finished. And as you can see, of course, Stormy was very helpful through the whole process. Once I was happy with how everything was working, I could go ahead and finish up painting. I already had painted the exterior stick at the very beginning of this process, but when I added on the square dowel, I needed to go back and paint that. And I also wanted to paint over the magnet and the black cardstock so that everything was as camouflaged as possible. I also painted over the pin nails once they had dried on my dollhouse, so if the lights are not applied for some reason, you don't notice the pin nails sticking out. So now it's on to the downspouts. I had talked about these earlier in the video. I am going to be trying to cut these at first with a box cutter, and to be honest, this is a lot of unneeded hand pain. I find a much easier way to do this later on. My Easy Cutter, of course, the most amazing tool ever, cuts through them beautifully, but you'll see me struggle with the box cutter for a little bit. When it comes to the downspouts, I'm starting to make inlets for where the wires can go into the downspout and start to move through the house. This particular downspout is going to be where 3 of the wires start at the very bottom. So I'm cutting out a small area where the wires can enter into the downspout, and this ends up getting bigger and bigger as I realize those wires are going to take up quite a bit of space. But this was a great first step to take, and I kind of learned how to cut out these small notches and just the best way to work around this material. I also had to cut some of the notches out on the side because these are where the lights are going to come out to connect with the wood horizontal pieces that are going to run across the front of the house. Once I was happy with where I had placed the notches, I used sandpaper to sand all over. This is a plastic that I'm working with, and the best way to paint plastic or have anything stick to plastic is to sand it so that the glue or paint has something to hold on to. This piece is going to have to be extended. The original was not long enough. So I'm going to be using some of that same black cardstock as a way to connect the 2 pieces. On the black cardstock, I'm putting a thick layer of tacky glue, and then I'm going to lay the smaller piece on the top and then line up the bottom piece, making sure that both meet equally in the center of the black cardstock. Then I can grab the 2 side pieces and roll it up over the edges, and this is going to help connect the pieces. I also added some super glue, as super glue holds plastics together really well, and added that in the center. I added a few more of the strips of paper, as this is going to kind of become a design element to the drain pipe to make it look a little bit more like pieces of metal that have been connected together to span up a 2-story building. Once that's finished, I'm taking some gray paint that pretty well matches the base color of the plastic and go over the black paper. Then I can just gently brush on some silver paint, and this is going to create what looks like the silver drain pipe or the metal drain pipe that is going to be on the building. It was around this point where I discovered that the Easy Cutter cuts these pieces so much better than the box cutter did. I mean, like butter almost. And so that would have made the whole process so much faster, but I'm glad I figured that out so I could pass that on to you. The most complicated drain pipe is going to be the one that goes up on the roof because it has to reach back to that tower area, and this is where using some of those connector pieces really came in handy. So if you do try this, be sure you check those out and see if any of those will be helpful in trying to reach all the parts of your dollhouse so that you can get light everywhere it needs to be. It was at this point I started thinking about how in the world am I going to magnetize these drain pipes to the house. And that's when I realized I was going to need to use those interior pieces. However, I'm not going to use the entire length. I'm just going to cut off short pieces, and I'm going to be inserting magnets into these pieces. Those are what's going to be magnetized to the pin nails that will be glued to the house. Now, you might be wondering why I'm using the very tiny magnets here. It's what I had. I highly suggest using something a little bit bigger. I was afraid the larger magnets I had wouldn't, I didn't have a drill bit that could drill into it. Anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm adding a little bit of black cardstock inside this piece so that my magnets have something to push up against once I insert them into the holes that I drilled. I'm adding some tacky glue into the holes, and then I can take my very small magnets and push them into the drilled holes. This will make them flush with the piece and easy to clip onto the back of my drain spouts so that it can be pushed up against the house and connect with the pin nails. I do suggest a larger magnet, which is why I'm using 2 instead of just 1. But you can kind of play around with it, and there's all sorts of different sizes of magnets out there. Once I'm happy with it, I'm just adding a last little bit of tacky glue over top. As with most projects, this has taken a lot longer than I first thought that it would. I'm in the final hour of needing to get this done so I can pack up the house to take it to the museum. So, I have to finish it. I've got all of the horizontal wood beams finished, so they are completely painted and they've got their magnets installed and they are all in place. I've got the vertical, which is the drain pipes. I still need to age them, but they are working. They are magnetizing to the side of the house. So in theory, I should just be able to take my roll of lights, apply it to the inside of the wood beams, run it up through the drain pipes, and put it all together. I really hope this works because I don't have time for another plan. I'm not sure how I'm going to show you how I'm doing this, but this has like a sticky sticker on the back, and when you take it off, it sticks. So I'm hoping that is enough to stick it to the wood, and if it's not, I'll just have to start adding glue. Okay. And we're just gonna go for it because it has to work. It has to work. I don't have time for anything else. This has to function. Wish me luck. Decided to insert a little drawing of all the lines that I'm going to be running through the house. So there's 3 lines. The first one's going to go along the first floor and up through Cousin It's room. The second one goes along the second floor and up through the kids' room in the attic. And the third one goes across Uncle Fester's room and up to the very top tower. And then all the pink lines represent the downspouts that are going to be along the sides. I'm going to be showing you the full process of how I run line 1, but then I'll just be showing you the results of line 2 and 3, so you're not having to watch the whole thing. So to begin, I'm pulling off the first section of line 1, which is starting at the very bottom left corner, right corner, bottom right corner. I'm starting with the end of the roll that had the plug, and I'm just using one section at a time. If I was trying to mess with the entire roll, it was just a little bit too fiddly. So the fact that I could break the pieces apart was really, really helpful. I'm plugging it in every now and then as I go along to make sure that all of my connections are correct, and that way if any of the sections of lights don't light up, I can figure out the problem right away. So once I have the first line in place and I'm happy with it, I can go ahead and make sure to grab the second section, plug it in, and then stick it down. If you're planning a project from the beginning with these, that might be a really good idea if you know you want something to light up, because then you can make your sections match up with the length of the lights. But I kind of had to adapt as I went along, trying to figure out how long to make the lights, or what to do with lights when they were too long for a section that I had already built. I did realize that I made a mistake with one of them, and I was really happy to find that it wasn't too hard to pull the stickiness back up and fix it. You will see what I mean in a second about having to deal with the lengths and trying to work that out with a pre-made dollhouse. It's really easy starting from the place where I started and just running lengths across, but when I get to the end, I have to figure out what to do with the leftover lights. So far I'm really happy with how much it's lighting up the house. It looks really nice, and the wood is hiding it well. So at the very end, I'm having to add a length of lights that is going to end up going mostly up the drain pipe, because I can't cut the piece in the center and still have the pre-made connections connect with the upper part of the light. If I was ending it without it having to go up the drain pipe, I can cut it, which I will show you that in the future. But for this part, it's going to have lights within the drain pipe in order to continue running lights up to the second floor in Cousin It's room. I added on a connector piece so that it could easily turn, and then that connector piece added to another set of lights that is going to light up that room. Because I didn't need to connect any more lights after Cousin It's room for this particular line, I could cut through this piece, and this will mean that I can't connect anything else, but it will end at the very end of Cousin It's room. And I was crossing my fingers because I wasn't sure if I could do this, but I wanted to make sure that everything still lit up, and it did. So now this piece is the perfect length for Cousin It's room, and I can stick it onto the piece of wood that magnetized to the front of that area. So now that I have all the lights that I want to show behaving, I have to go back and deal a little bit more with the lights that are going to be in the drain pipe. And this is me just standing here staring at it for a while. You know, you have to do that. You have to be excited about what you're doing. I ended up working with this a little bit, trying to figure out how this was best going to look. These lights can be a little bit fiddly trying to work with them, especially when it comes to the magnets, because they will kind of push and react whenever you are trying to get them to fit inside of a space they don't want to fit in, and that can cause the magnets to pop off. But ultimately, I was able to get it to work. Using the connector pieces was really helpful, especially trying to get them to bend and connect to the upper floor. So remember those connector pieces if you do try this. Going back to the lights in the drain pipe, as you saw, they were lighting up, and it kind of looked like, I don't know, it looked like my drain pipe was just glowing. So I took some electrical tape and started winding it around the lights that were going to be within the pipe. This also helped them be a little bit more controlled, I would say, and it wasn't pushing against the house as much. And now you can see that there are no lights coming out of the drain pipe, and the lights are only in the places where I want them to be. And that was how I completed line 1. I did the same thing for line 2, however it started going up a drain pipe first, went across Gomez and Morticia's room, across Gomez's office, across this little library area. It went up another drain pipe up to Wednesday and Pugsley's room, and then it went partially over into the attic area, but it gets stopped by the stairs. Line 3 goes all the way up 2 floors first and connects to a piece going across Uncle Fester's room. And then this actually goes up the attic. It runs up a vertical wood piece that I made, and then the drain pipe goes all the way back and bumps up to the tower, which goes across the front of the tower, which is where you can usually find Pubert's crib. So this is how the house looks completely lit up with all 3 lines going at the same time. It requires 3 plugs, so I do have to make sure I have enough outlets in order to completely have the lights running. In case you were wondering why the basement isn't lit up, that wasn't part of the house that's going to the museum. They didn't have room for that. So for this video, I was just focusing on the upper floors, and I am so happy with the result. I think the inside is so much brighter. You can see so much more of the interior finishes and the miniatures, and I really like how the outside came out as well. It's nice and dark with the bright lights and gives it a spooky feel. Okay, I've got all of it plugged in and it's all lit up, even up to the tower at the very top. And so what I'm gonna do is turn out the lights and give you my final thoughts on this process. So as you can see, this did work. It was a little bit more fiddly than I imagined, trying to get the flat tape to turn and twist and kind of do the things I wanted to go from a vertical piece to a horizontal piece was a little bit tricky. Also, working with the different lengths is something to kind of consider, because I had to cut a few of them, and anyway, it's not the perfect solution. I'm just gonna say that right now. But if you're on a time crunch, you have a finished dollhouse, which would be very difficult to take apart and rewire, this may be a solution so that you can see the spaces within. There's a few more things I need to do, like clean up some of the wire transitions with some electrical tape and make sure that everything with the magnets is working. This drain pipe over here, right here, likes to pop off because it's like there's spring-loaded wires that are pushing against the house trying to pop off the magnets. So I think what I'm going to do is take some electrical tape, and I'm just going to, I guess permanently, but with tape, put those items in there or squish those wires in so that they're not trying to push against the house, which is pushing the drain pipe off. I'm happy with the overall glow and how much it lights up the inside. And also, so I think you might have to add this piece in for the remote to work, but we'll see. Yep, nothing went off. So I'm hoping one remote will control all three. After I finished filming, we were able to get one remote to control all three lights at the same time, so it functioned as one lighting set. So if you were looking for that, just know that it is possible. Anyway, I'll figure it out. But for now, this is the finished result of adding some emergency lights for my Addams Family project, so you can actually see inside when it's at the museum. And the next time you will see this project, it will be in the museum on display, and I'm so excited. So thank you so much for following along on this weird video. But we like to keep it weird when it comes to the Addams Family, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you all have an amazing week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Sit. Down. No. Okay. Good, good.